sorry for the delay, guys. As you can see, I have two guys working on two different machines, trying to get this demo up and running. It's 5 p.m. and a lot of you made it. It looks like that rumor I spread about alcohol being served worked. But anyway, my name is Nikhil. I've got a prize here for whoever can pronounce my first name correctly. Anybody? Almost. Anybody want to do better than that? All right, nobody. You win that. It's it's Balgopal and Nikhil. I'm a senior product manager over in the Windows client team, particularly in the desktop virtualization group over at Microsoft. And I apologize, I'm a little vertically challenged, so I'm going to stand right out here and talk. So today we're here to talk about Windows Thin PC. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you attended the Windows Embedded session that was held yesterday? Anybody went to that session? Okay. So for those of you who raised your hands, I'm going to ask you to be a little patient because some of the material might be repeated. There's just so much you can say about a thin client, right? And what we're going to go into, and another show of hands, how many of you have heard about Windows Thin PC? Awesome. Why are you guys here then? Oh, no, I'm just kidding. How many of you have downloaded the beta? Anybody? Played with it? Awesome. Okay, cool. So for the rest of you, I've got a pretty fair idea of this audience. I mean, most of you are familiar with Windows Thin PC. So I'm going to speed up in a few places, go slow in a few places. But this is essentially what we're going to cover today. I'm going to talk about thin clients in general, because there are some of you that didn't raise your hands when I asked about Thin PC in the Windows Embedded session. We're also going to do a quick overview of what Windows Thin PC is. Windows Thin PC is a VDI endpoint. And we'll talk to you guys a little bit about how to think about deploying Windows Thin PC in your organization, okay? So let's talk about thin clients a little bit. Now, how many of you running VDI in your environments? Terminal services, sessions? Okay, quite a fair bit of you. So as you know, we've spent a considerable amount of time looking at thin client computing. We've had the Windows Embedded line of products for a long time. And really what we've realized is thin clients are an essential part of your desktop strategy. And the way to think about deploying them is as part of your overall desktop strategy, right? And I get a lot of questions about really what is a thin client. What's a thin client to one person might be a zero client to another, might be a stripped down PC to a third person. So let's really look at defining what a thin client is. Let's start off with the intent, right? For those of you that have deployed VDI, know what I'm talking about here. A thin client is designed to always be connected to a server-based desktop. And this is important because what this means is the basic assumption that a thin client manufacturer makes is that your full desktop, your actual productivity desktop and your productivity applications are going to be running remotely. They are not going to be running locally, right? That's the number one assumption that a thin client manufacturer makes. So again, we've defined, if a device is intended to be always used in a connected mode, that is, it's not designed to execute by itself, standalone, it can be classified as a thin client. The other characteristic of a thin client is its profile itself. Typically, lower footprints, very little, if any, hard disk at all. How many of you have been to the Remote FX Pavilion and you've seen those zero clients, those shiny new little things? Like them? Thinking about buying them, right? So those really have no storage at all, right? So most of these devices have extremely low profiles. And what that means is they need a purpose-built operating system to run those devices. Typically, at Microsoft, we have the Windows Embedded line, which, depending upon the product you choose, can be as beefy as WES 7, Windows Embedded Standard 7, or as thin as Compact 7, and a whole range in between. So really, if a device satisfies all three of this criteria, it's a thin client. A couple of examples, for example, if you walk around the expo floor, a couple of our partners are here, they ship these devices, okay? Hang on, I skipped ahead. But one thing to note is any device, really any device that's capable of a remote connection can be used as a thin client. What that means is, how many of you thinking about bringing, I don't know, a thin slate-ish form factor into your organization and have your desktop running remotely? Anybody, just for the mobility? Right. Can that device execute applications? Absolutely. But you're going to use it primarily to connect to a remote desktop. And from that perspective, it's a thin client, right? Everybody with me here still? Okay, great. I'm actually flattered. There are a lot of parties out today, and you guys are here. Awesome. So let's talk about when you look at thin clients. I mean, when do you actually deploy a thin client versus a PC? So everybody agree with me here, right, that the only scenarios where thin clients would be applicable are server-based desktop scenarios. Anybody have a different opinion? Okay, great. So I'm right so far. So let's look at three different scenarios that come into play. You have what we call hybrid server-based desktop scenarios. This is where you would need the capability to run local applications as well. A couple of you stopped by the booth today and talked to me about how you wanted to implement, for example, VDI, but for people like your developers, where they need their Outlook and their all of their productivity apps to be running locally on the desktop, and their development desktops are in the data center, like VDI. Or you have local applications, and you're accessing a hosted line of business application that's in your data center. So anytime you need local computing power, you really can't use a thin client, because remember what we said in the first slide, thin clients can't be used for local compute. The other scenario that we see, for which organizations deploy server-based computing, is when you've already decided on a form factor, an unmanaged device, right? Slates, iPads, home PCs. Any of you thinking of enabling your workers to work from home, get them to not come to the office, bring your own device scenarios, right? So what's the best way to enable a secure managed desktop to those devices? VDI or sessions, right? Centralized desktops. Now, in those cases, you really don't have your choice of device, because really that's what you want to get out of that business of managing devices. But the device that's connecting into your environment acts like a thin client. And you've got to assume that it's a thin client, because you really don't want to know what that end device is. You don't want to manage it. You don't want to configure it. You don't want to do anything. So you make the assumption that it's a thin client, and you deploy server-based desktops. So really, the only scenario that's left where thin clients are applicable is pure server-based desktop scenarios. These are scenarios where absolutely no local computing power is required. You want a secured, lockdown device at the endpoint, and all of your computing happens in the server. As an example, call center workers. How many of you would love to deliver a thin client computing solution to your call center workers, not have them muck around with their devices, no installing applications, centrally managed deploy patches? Only one person, really? So that's a great scenario for thin client computing, right? Anybody experimenting with what's the right word here? Hoteling, having kiosk-based desktops in your environment, and having anybody walk up to any terminal and access their full PC? Absolutely. Again, great scenario for thin client computing. So these are the scenarios where thin client computing makes sense. But remember what we said? Windows desktop can be used as a thin client as well, right? So where do you draw that line? How do you decide what form factor is right for you? The best way to do that is to look at what's really important to you from a device strategy perspective, okay? Now, if data security and device TCO are top of mind for you guys, that means you are in an industry that is heavily regulated, has a lot of compliance requirements, or you just want to buy a device and forget about it for the next 7 to 10 years, right? If that's important to you, get the lowest TCO possible. You want to think about deploying actual thin clients, because these things don't suck a lot of power. They sip power. They're very efficient. They have a small attack surface, and they're rugged. They're more rugged than PCs, okay? However, if you're not sure that thin client computing is right for you, you want the flexibility to go back at a later stage, or you think you may expand the use case to have local applications, or you want to have the absolute best user experience possible, it might be a better idea to use a PC in that scenario. Now, one thing to consider is, again, depending upon which vendor you choose and which vendor you talk to, there's a lot of comments made about thin client being zero management. There is absolutely zero management overhead. Think about this. If you're deploying anything that has an operating system on it, and you're using that operating system to remote into a desktop, and that operating system can be hacked, it doesn't matter if your desktop's in the data center. Yes, your desktops are more secure in the data center, but if anybody can screen scrape what you're doing, your information is vulnerable, security is vulnerable. So you do need to manage that operating system. When even the lowest footprint devices, the manufacturers push out firmware updates, right? Occasionally end-to-end to keep up with market, to improve performance. Those updates need to be delivered to whatever, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 devices in your environment. So what is that? It's a form of management, patching and updating, right? So you need to consider management even when you look at thin client computing. What devices or what vendor integrates with the management in your organization, and for what class of devices you have to buy a completely new management solution. I'm sure none of us are looking to buy a new management solution for thin client computing. So something to keep in mind. There's no the reason it's in the center is there's no recommendation. I mean, whether it's a PC or a thin client, you do need to manage it. Granted, thin clients require less management, way less management than a PC, but it's not zero management. And I just want to give you that thought. All right, enough of thin client computing. Let's talk about Windows Thin PC. The reason I spent some time up front on thin client computing is because that's the scenario that Windows Thin PC plays in, right? So today, like we talked, if you have server-based desktops and you're thinking about endpoint devices, roughly you've got two choices. Use an existing PC. How many of you are using an existing PC because you don't want to use thin client devices in your environment? A few of you? Awesome. Right? I mean, it's great. No additional licensing costs, no new devices to buy. But now you have two images to manage per user, a local image and a remote image, right? Doubles your management overhead. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons you wanted to move to this architecture in the first place, is to reduce your management costs. Your other option, and we established this, is to buy a thin client. Reduce management, longer life, greater security, but you do need the new devices. And how many of you are familiar with VDI licensing? How many of you love VDI licensing? I thought so. So, the thin client devices, whether it's Windows embedded or another operating system, or even if it's a zero client, if you're accessing VDI, you need the new VDI. You need the VDI license. It's not new anymore. But really, those are your two choices. And what a lot of customers told us is, I want the best of both worlds. I want to use my existing hardware and software resources, but at the same time, I don't want to manage two images. Essentially, what you guys asked us for is the embedded operating system on a PC, right? And really, that's what Windows Thin PC is. We've taken, it's a way that you can, okay, let me back up here. The value proposition for Windows Thin PC is that it allows you to repurpose your existing PCs as thin clients, right? And I say PCs in particular because you do need to have a qualifying operating system. It's licensing jargon, and I'm sorry to get into it so early, but you do need to have a qualifying PC, Windows Professional, Enterprise, or Ultimate, to be able to use Windows Thin PC. But at the end of the day, if you have these devices lying around and you're evaluating thin client computing, Windows Thin PC is a great way to lock down those devices. And when we started looking at building out Windows Thin PC, we started looking at, okay, what's the value that we want to deliver to our customers, right, to you guys? And number one, you guys want to reduce costs. And we'll talk about, the whole session is titled How You Can Reduce Your Costs with VDI through Windows Thin PC. But the one thing to remember about Windows Thin PC is we're going to make Windows Thin PC available as an SA benefit, which means that if you already have software assurance on your PCs, this is a zero-cost solution for you. It's a benefit, right? And we'll talk about how you can get SA and the different models for that. Again, if you're using your existing PCs, no additional cost. It's the same. There's zero incremental cost to anybody who has SA on their PCs today. And many of you are going to be asking us, why SA? Why limited to SA customers? If you look at all of the investments we've made in software assurance over the past couple of years, that really is our vehicle to delivering virtualization benefits to you. So another benefit of SA, for those of you that are not familiar with this, is If you have SA, you don't need the Windows VDI licensing, right? So again, great benefit for virtualization. If you have software assurance, you can access 4 VMs concurrently and up to an unlimited number of VMs non-concurrently. Again, great for VDI scenarios. So it was just natural to slot Windows 10 PC into the SA mold and continue delivering value to our software assurance customers. What we also wanted to do was, not have any compromises on the thin client experience. How many of you have Windows embedded devices in your environment? The Wes 7. Wes 7, anybody in particular? Wes 7 devices? One person? Awesome. One is good, really. So we took the Wes 7 platform, which is a very, very, very stable, high-performing thin client platform, and we made a few tweaks to it to enable it to run on PCs and added some value to what we believed would be value to our enterprise customers, right? So we added things like remote effects. We brought in the right filter, and we'll go through that in greater detail. But basically, the other tenet when we were designing Windows 10 PC was to make sure no compromises, absolutely zero compromises on the thin client experience. And lastly, remember we talked about management. Since this is built off of Windows 10 PC is built off of the Wes 7 platform, and Wes 7 is in turn built off of Windows 7. We wanted it inherits a lot of management and security capability of that platform. It's enterprise ready. We built in a lot of enterprise features. It's manageable. It's secure, and that's the added value that Windows 10 PC brings you. So let's talk about what this really means. Let's talk features. When we talked about the thin client experience, the features that we specifically want to talk about are the right filters. How many of you know what a right filter is? Played with it? Okay, we'll dive into that in greater detail. But essentially, helping block writes to the hard disk is what a right filter does, and we'll talk about how that. And if the demo gods are with me, we hopefully will have a demo. Okay, great. Remote effects. How many of you running Hyper-V in your environment? 2008 SP1? Awesome. Played with remote effects at all? Like it for airline environments? And we'll go into greater detail on what remote effects is and what it does to those of you that didn't raise your hands. But remote effects essentially is a tool to help you improve the user experience of your VDI environment. And the small footprint. Again, if the demo gods are with me, I will show you exactly what the footprint of a Windows 10 PC device is. We talked about lowering of the cost, so I won't spend too much time there, but lowering cost is good. And of course, the enterprise-ready platform. We've built the Windows 7 experience into the core product. We've also taken enterprise features that are only available in the Windows 7 enterprise SKU. It's not available in professional. I'm talking about BitLocker, App Locker, Direct Access. We've built all of that stuff right into the core platform for Windows 10 PC. And we've also ensured that you can deploy, manage, patch your Windows 10 PC the same way you do your Windows 7 desktops today. So we built in support for System Center Configuration Manager. Okay? So this is just a high-level overview of what we mean on delivering on those 3 promises we talked about with Windows 10 PC. Now, the next question that many of you would have is, okay, great, you've been yapping on, but tell me what really is the difference between Wes 7 and Windows 10 PC. They seem to be the same thing, right? Well, yes and no. So a couple of things to remember here. In terms of availability, Wes 7, the only way you can get a Windows Embedded Standard 7 operating system is if you purchase the device from the OEM. You can't download Wes 7. You can't install it. I mean, you can install it and make configuration changes to it if your OEM gives you the install CD. But more often than not, once you buy a thin client device, you don't want to touch it anymore. So you call your OEM, you place an order for a device, and it gets shipped to you. That's how you get Wes 7. Windows 10 PC is available through VL channels, through your volume licensing agreements. And we'll talk about this in greater detail, but essentially it's available through software assurance. Any vehicle that delivers software assurance to you, Windows 10 PC is available through that channel. Wes 7 and Windows 10 PC share a lot of common benefits. The Windows 7 experience, the remote effects, right filter functionality and the system center integration. They share that, but that's about where the similarities end. Wes 7 is nothing but a toolkit that's delivered to the OEM. So we've taken Windows 7 Enterprise, we've sliced and diced it into its component. It's a componentized OS, and we've delivered those components to the OEMs, and the OEMs then use that to make you a personalized Wes 7 image, right? So Wes 7 is extremely flexible, depending upon what feature you want or don't want in it. For example, if you don't want Windows Media Player, you can pull that component out. If you don't want IE, you can pull that component out. You can get a really, really small Wes 7 image, or you can get a really, really thick Wes 7 image. Completely depends on what features you want in it. Windows 10 PC, however, is a non-customizable image, which means it's a standard download. It's going to be available through your VL website. And once you get that image, because we had to solve for the majority user base, we asked our customers, we asked you through the beta program, what features are you looking for? What features do you think should be in or out of the product? So we took the least common denominator, added features that we thought would be useful to you, and that's what Windows 10 PC is. So it's non-configurable. Windows 10 PC has enterprise features out of the box. Wes 7, App Locker, BitLocker, Direct Access, those features are available only in high-end premium thin clients. So you'll notice that thin clients with those features cost a little bit more. When we talk about hardware efficiency, this is really where Wes 7 scores over Windows 10 PC, because at the end of the day, you're going to be installing Windows 10 PC on a PC. It's going to use the same amount of power. It's going to, it's still got this heavy hard disk that's going to be spinning. It's still got the fan. Wes 7 clients are purpose-built, which means they're really efficient from a power perspective. They're really locked down. You can get these really rugged devices. So that's where Wes 7 really scores over the Windows 10 PC. And of course, where Windows 10 PC scores over Wes 7 is in the cost department. How many of you have SA on your? Wow. That's 50% of the room. For you guys, it's free. Really, it's free. And I really mean free. Did I mention it's free? Okay. But Wes 7 is going to cost you, depending upon, of course, what device you buy and which OEM you buy it from. Right? So I've just given you a brief snapshot of what Windows 10 PC is. We'll go into a few of the features in greater detail. Is it working? Are you sure? Okay. So we talked about availability, and I just want to touch upon this very briefly. You do need SA to get Windows 10 PC, and I keep getting this question a lot. What if I don't have SA? When I got my agreement, I had 90 days to get SA on it, and I didn't take that option. How can I get SA on that PC now? So we have two other vehicles that give you SA. One of them is Windows VDA, and most of you said you love this license. But one of the benefits of Windows VDA is that it includes all the software assurance benefits that come with SA, all of them, right? That includes Windows 10 PC. How many of you are familiar with Windows Intune? Anybody Windows Intune? So Windows Intune is our first ever cloud-based management service. So it's if you want to get a management console for your desktops out in the cloud without actually buying the system center infrastructure, Windows Intune is for you. And it's again per device. You pay for it per device. It's a subscription. One of the benefits of Windows Intune is that any device you buy Windows Intune for, it includes SA and hence includes the rights to Windows 10 PC. One thing I do want to stress, and we're still, I'm surprised nobody asked me this question yet, but Windows 10 PC is just past beta. We expect to RTM next month. So we're still working through the licensing guidelines and rules. But one of the restrictions that we are forced to put on is the fact that you need to have an existing qualifying OS to run Windows 10 PC. So your device needs to be a PC that has either a Windows Professional, Enterprise, or Ultimate. So even though you can buy Windows VDA for thin clients or Macs or any device really, you can't put Windows 10 PC on that device. And I'd be glad to have a conversation with you separately about why that is. But for any PC that has a qualifying operating system, you can apply any one of these. You can get SA through any one of these channels, and it's available through all channels that SA is available through, which includes your Open, Select, EA, etc. Let's talk about, we talked about cost savings, right? Now, I don't, have any one of you actually looked at the VDI TCO white paper that we published on Microsoft.com/VDI? Anybody even been to Microsoft.com/VDI? Okay. Sorry guys, I know it's 5. I'm trying to speed up so I can get you guys out of here in time for beer. This is just a snapshot of of a TCO study that we did, where we compared a PC environment to a VDI environment, and we measured costs across facilities, hardware, software, IT operations, and finance. Again, disclaimer, okay? Everybody out there has a VDI TCO study. Everybody has different numbers, and everybody has different assumptions, okay? So we've tried to make our study as real as possible rather than taking theoretical numbers. We actually went out to customer sites. We spent 2 weeks with them. We measured every aspect of their IT infrastructure. We went to customers that haven't deployed Microsoft. They've actually deployed VMware. So these numbers are a pretty fair representation of real-world VDI. Okay, we've not, and this study, although commissioned by us, it was done by an independent panel, including folks from Gartner, folks that used to work at Gartner and Elinian, who do the TCO calculators. But essentially, the bar on the right is what a typical annual TCO structure looks like for a VDI desktop running Windows 7. Okay, as you can see, the annual cost of the hardware is about $130. Annual cost of software is about $342. So, I mean, that's the stack of a VDI desktop, the cost. Now, I want to focus, and I probably, in hindsight, should have done a build on this slide, but I want to focus on the 2 buckets, which is the software and hardware. Okay, the hardware bucket, which is the $130, if you expand that, we again measured endpoint cost, storage, and server. This is just physical hardware. Okay, and as you can see, endpoint costs form a large majority of the hardware costs. We're assuming thin clients here. Okay. We are specifically assuming wise thin clients here. Now, with a thin client, you're going to pay the full 64 for the endpoint. But without a thin client, if you're repurposing a PC, that cost doesn't come into play at all. All right, so you're saving about $64 a year annually if you're repurposing a PC. Coming to the software side, the $342 is broken up, $208 for your enterprise agreement, your VDA licensing, your server licensing, your support, all of that built in. We're talking about an enterprise-grade VDI deployment here, right? Your numbers will vary, not might, will vary from these numbers depending upon your environment. And the $128 is the cost of the VMware software, which is ESX, vCenter, and their support clauses. Now, I've reduced that number by 100. With thin PC, your Microsoft licensing costs come down by $100. Anybody know why? Anybody? Brilliant. Who said that? For you, my friend, because you know so much about VDA. But you don't pay the Windows VDA licensing, as now VDA is a benefit. VDA is a benefit of software assurance. And if you repurpose your PCs that already have SA on them, you don't pay that. So your average, again, your approximated average savings by using Windows Thin PC over a full-blown thin client is about $164 a year. Now I say average and I say estimated because remember, these are still PCs. They won't last as long as thin clients. They're going to burn out at some time. There's a whole bunch of factors that you need to consider. So again, although these TCO studies are just directional, please take these numbers with a pinch of salt, okay? If you guys are wondering what I'm giving out here, it's a 4 gig USB drive that has a built-in battery that can charge your laptops, your phones. So it's a pretty cool device, so pay attention. I have one more, and that question will come up soon. Hey, it's better than beer, guys. Come on, I mean, there's the next best thing I could do. I'm sorry. So let's move on a little bit, and let's talk about the thin client experience in itself. Many of you didn't raise your hands when I asked about remote effects, but as of in Windows Server 2008 R2 SP1, okay, That's a long name. We introduced two specific features for VDI, one of them being remote effects. Now, how many of you agree with me that a user experience is pretty darn important in a VDI deployment, right? How many of you are getting the user experience you want today? Wow, that's a drastic reduction in hands. So remote effects was designed exactly for that purpose. Now, most vendors, the way they handle graphics and high fidelity content in a VDI deployment is to send the graphics across the network and have the local endpoint decode the graphics, right, or execute the multimedia content. Now we're seeing servers in the market that come with GPUs. How cool is that? A server with a GPU. What remote effects does is it utilizes the GPU on the server. It actually virtualizes that GPU on the server and presents a virtual graphics card to each virtual machine, which means now that your virtual machine is offloading all of its graphics processing content to the server GPU, which now means your server is more efficient. It's able to handle better graphics, so high fidelity, 3D remoting, multi-monitor, all of that capability is now delivered to you with remote effects. It handles graphics, audio, video, tons better than RDP could, and it's available only in Hyper-V. What we've done with remote effects, as with the rest of our Windows 7 lineup, whether it's Wes 7, whether it's a full Windows 7 client, Windows 10 PC supports remote effects too. Brett, is the demo ready? Okay, let's see if this works, guys. So just want to apologize. The demo gods have just not been with me today, and I've been working on this thing all day. So first of all, let's see if it projects. Whew. This was what we took 15 minutes to get done, to try and get the thin PC to project. Really, I'm not kidding. That's what we were trying to do. So this is my Windows Thin PC. As you can see, it feels like Windows 7. I'm going to open up a bunch of stuff here. It's got full arrow support. It's got flip. What else do you care about? Oh, we talked about the small footprint. Let's look at, and again, I've got two. So when I did the install, it automatically renames my Windows old folder, right? So this is my old Windows installation. It's about, I want to say, 1.5 gigs. Let's just wait for it to do that. About 1 gig. Okay, that's Windows old. So really, if I look at the size of my install, 3.7 gigs, subtract a 1 gig for the Windows old, that's about 2.5, 3 gigs worth of, and I've installed some stuff on the Windows 10 PC, so it's actually higher. But a clean install of Windows 10 PC is going to run you about anywhere from 2.5 to 3 gigs. Okay, so that's greatly reduced from the footprint of a normal Windows 7 desktop, and very similar to most Wes 7 footprints here. So I'm going to use my Windows 10 PC to connect to, which client am I supposed to use? The top one? Okay. I'm going to connect into my VDI desktop that's running on, quote unquote, the server here. Should I make that disclaimer? I should make the disclaimer, right? No? You sure? Okay, I'm going to do it anyway. So this is a laptop that has a laptop graphics card. So remote effects wasn't designed for this specific graphics card, but I'm still going to try and attempt to run remote effects off of this machine. So let's see how we do on that. I'm going to connect into my VDI, Windows 7 VDI desktop here. And come on, demo gods, work with me. So here we go. This is my Windows 7 VM. Again, as you can see, it's got the full fidelity Windows desktop. If IE ever loads up, I can show you. Here we go. The arrow effect. I can do snap. Pretty much any feature of Windows 7. The flip. So it's got a full arrow experience, and this is remote effects working. This is right now we have a LAN environment, but still you get the full Windows 7 desktop experience with remote effects. The biggest, if anybody has to show you a demo on the user experience, what better way to do it than video? And again, I want you to bear in mind, there's not a supported graphics card, but I'm going to try and play. So this is high definition video, and I'm sorry, but I, can't. The speakers here are bad. This is high definition video over a VDI environment, smooth, no choppiness, right? So that's the power of remote effects. It allows you to do stuff on your VDI desktop that typically wasn't possible with RDP, all right? And I'm going to go back and forth between my presentation and the demo so that we look at each feature in detail. Let's talk about write filters. Now, we talked about thin clients being a really secure endpoint, and one of the features that's not available in Windows 7, but has been specifically designed for the Windows embedded line, is the write filter. What the write filter does is it creates, by the way, it can be controlled through group policy, through command line, through shell scripts. You can turn it on and off. But essentially what a write filter does is it creates a virtual hard disk on top of your hard drive. And any writes that you do to that virtual hard disk, to the thin PC, get written to the virtual disk and not to the physical. So if the write filter is enabled, and you reboot your machine, upon next reboot, upon the next startup, that virtual hard disk is cleaned up. Any changes that you made in the previous session are wiped out, and you get a pristine image every single time you boot up your Windows 10 PC. And this is really useful because you don't want your users, because they're using the remote desktop, you don't want them making changes to the local device. You don't want malware. For example, if something gets into the Windows 10 PC, if a piece of malware gets in, what's the easiest solution? Reboot. The malware is gone, right? And there are two types of the write filters that are bundled into Windows 10 PC. You have the enhanced write filter, which pretty much blocks all writes to disk. I mean, nothing gets through. Your next question is, wait a minute. Let's say I have some sort of anti-malware engine installed on my Windows 10 PC. If I push down virus definition updates, are you telling me that if I reboot, those virus definition updates are gone? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. They're gone. But we've anticipated that scenario, and we've also included what we call the file-based write filter. And what the file-based write filter does is you can define certain files, not folders, not volumes, but files that are excluded from the write filter process, which means you can say, you know what, symantec slash blah, blah, blah slash virus definition dot txt or CSV is excluded from the write filter process. Now, if you push down an antivirus definition update and that file changes, those changes will persist across reboots. But anything else, if you install a game, which I'm about to do now, that's completely blocked from appearing on the disk, which is pretty cool, right? I mean, you essentially increase the security on your endpoint. So I'm just going to connect off of my VDI desktop here. Let's say, oh, I wanted to show you USB remoting through remote effects, but we'll I don't know if I have time or if you guys even care, but we'll do that towards the end of the demo. But let's say I'm going to make some changes to the file. So I'm gonna, and bear with me, Brett calls me a pecker. I actually type with 2 fingers, so bear with me here. So I've got this file, simple notepad, and I've modified it, and I'm gonna save this, okay? I'm in the same session, so if I open it up, guess what? Changes still persist. Now, I'm going to try and do something which I'm sure most of your employees are going to try to do. Here we go. I want to play solitaire. How many of you like solitaire? Am I the only one? Don't tell my boss, please. So I'm going to install Solitaire onto my local thin PC because that's, as a responsible, productive employee, that's what I want to do, right? It's now there in my program files. There's an actual change. You can see it show up here, and I can play Solitaire all I want. This part of the demo is going to take some time, guys, because what I'm going to do is, you as an IT admin find out that your users are doing something wrong. So what you do is you send a forced reboot to their machines. or you force them not to log out but to reboot. And bear with me here. Shutting down, shutting down, shutting down. I'm sorry? Oh no, you can do a. I pressed shut down by mistake. I wanted to restart, but you can do a soft reboot. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Stupid me. I forgot to check if the write filter was in fact enabled on this device. Let me. I hope this doesn't affect my eval scores, but we'll figure that out. If solitaire still exists, the write filter is off, and I planned that all along to show you the value of a write filter. But was there a specific reason you were asking a scenario? Mm-hmm. As long as your RAM is refreshed, which happens on any kind of reboot, the changes will go. Demo gods work with me here. I hope I had enabled the write filter. We'll find out soon enough. So how many of you think this would be a useful feature for your thin client environment? Okay. And as you can see, Free Spider Solitaire is there. So what a great demo, or I am. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you how to turn on and off the write filter. And this is, again, a demo system, so I'm going to do this through using command line. So yep, state it's disabled. So let's enable this sucker. So it's simple. Type it in for C colon. Now when I enable it, it's now enabled. Unfortunately, now that I've enabled it, I need to reboot again. And I'll go through the rest of my presentation while. No, it takes effect. The virtual hard disk is created when it reboots. So I need to create that virtual hard disk. So yeah. So when I go back, I'm gonna uninstall, or I'm gonna make some more modifications, and I'll show you that those changes don't persist. Is that fair?
One question. I'm presuming that you mentioned that you had other circumstances allow you to start definitions update occur.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because changes in the system context can permanence to the hard drive, and therefore you still need antivirus on the Windows 10 PC? Or what? I'm trying to understand why are all writes prevented, or only writes in the context of the user prevented?
All writes are prevented to the hard disk, which is why I'm running this as, even in order to even run the write filter command, I need to be logged in as an administrator to make any. That's the only command that persists, that allows me to turn the write filter on and off. Everything else is blocked. That would not persist. That would not persist. That is a great question. To my knowledge, no, there aren't any magic files that are kept safe. I mean, if you turn on the write filter, it's on for the whole hard disk. Yes. Through a USB, you mean? No, you can't. If the SD card's part of the device, yes, but not. You can't boot from USB if that's the question. Hold that thought. I've got that covered. It's coming up.
One question for Rhonda is, so if you have write filter enabled, is there any reason whatsoever for enabling that?
Yeah, sure. Because for the changes not to persist, you reboot. So let's imagine a scenario where your worker comes in at 9 a.m. A hacker gets control over his Windows 10 PC through malware at 9:02, and the guy doesn't shut off his Windows 10 PC till 5. The malware has an 8-hour window to try and steal data, which is pretty significant. So yes, the answer is yes, yes, yes. Any thin client, please use anti-malware and protection. God, I sound like a health ad. Use protection. Yeah.
Is there any, I mean, it sounds like it would be a good idea for
Right.
It would be interesting to see if there's, is there deeper analysis on that available?
So let me put it this way. This is the right filter functionality is the same as what you would get in a Wes 7 device, right? It's the exact same right filter. Because Windows 10 PC is built off of Wes 7, it inherits the best of Windows 7 and Wes, and that's really our design goal. So there is no, it's not a stripped down version of Wes, it's a stripped down version of Windows 7. Does that make sense? Because Wes is componentized. We took all the components that we felt were useful, use that to build in the Windows 10 PC. So the rights, the remote effects, it's all full Wes. Okay? And now, as you can see, the right filter is enabled. And I'm sorry this demo is dragging on. Please don't leave. But essentially, if I now, these are really going to disappear. Okay? So this is a change that I'm going to save, and I'm just to keep the session going. I'm just going to come back to this, but we'll just switch gears for a minute. All I'm doing is shutting it down. So we talked about the thin client experience, and you saw that this is the same experience you would get with Wes, which is a pretty good thin client OS. Let's talk about the enterprise features. So number one, we mentioned at the very beginning that this integrates with your System Center Config Manager. So the way you would deliver a Windows 10 PC image to a PC is the same that you would deliver a Windows image to your PCs. It's the exact same mechanism, uses the exact same System Center controls, integrates with PowerShell, the whole enchilada. You can manage, update, deploy patches using System Center, assuming that the right filter is off. Okay? What happens if the right filter is on? You're going to lose your changes, right? So for that, we've introduced a new product called WEDM, or Windows Embedded Device Manager 2011. Now, there are multiple ways you can update a Windows 10 PC or a thin client with the right filters enabled. One is by writing custom scripts and deploying custom scripts across your environment. Appealing option to some, not a very appealing option to a lot of you. With WEDM, by the way, how many of you have heard, seen, been to a session on WDM? Anybody? Okay, a couple of people. So WDM is an add-on to Config Manager, specifically designed to manage the Windows embedded range of devices, whether it's thin client, pause-ready product, Wes 7. It handles the non-server and PC management task for your enterprise. So what a simple workflow that WEDM does is, when you want to deploy an application patch, or you want to deploy a system patch to a Windows embedded thin client, or even a Windows thin PC, with the right filters turned on, WDM has intelligence built in to first check, okay, whether the right filter is on. If it's on, it's going to turn it off. It's going to deploy the patch using the System Center tools. It's then going to restart the right filter. It's going to reboot your machine. It has these automated workflows in the tool to enable you to do that. So the reason we built WEDM is because, like we mentioned, most of our embedded products are customized, they're componentized, right? So you have a wide range of devices and form factors and OS configurations. WEDM is designed to handle this variation in the thin client world. Since Windows Thin PC is just static image, all you really need, the most useful feature of WDM is the ability to handle patches and updates and writes even with the right filter turned on, and you can define that. Yes, sir.
Up until recently, I won't say that, just kind of preface that, maybe this is going forward for you guys. But previously, Microsoft did not recognize embedded operating systems with their hotfix or patch releases. They just said Windows XP
Right.
or whatever, correct? So are you guys now going to start releasing hotfixes and patches based on embedded operating systems?
So we've always released patches and updates for the embedded operating system, but it's been an out-of-band cycle to the Windows release. So Windows releases patches, you pick a guess what the frequency is, right? The whole premise of a thin client is that you shouldn't have to manage it and patch it and update it as much as you would a Windows device. And since Windows Wes 7 doesn't have a lot of the components that Windows has, many of the patches that Windows releases don't affect OS 7, and many of them will not affect Windows 10 PC. So we do release patches from, because Windows Embedded, the operating system itself, supports WSUS and Windows Update. It supports it out of the box. The only difference is the patches that are pushed out to those operating systems have a different cadence to the Windows operating system. And why that is because once Windows releases a patch, the Windows Embedded team looks at the patch, they decide if it's applicable to the embedded operating system lineup, they package it specifically for the embedded operating system lineup and then pushes it down to the OEMs, and then the OEMs push it down to the endpoints. So with Windows 10 PC, it still integrates with the WSUS Windows Update. We're trying to make that process more efficient, but you're right, it's a forward-looking thing for us. We're trying to make that process a little bit more efficient. The embedded patches. Windows 10 PC is built off of WES, so it will work on the embedded cycle. You don't want to. I'm assuming that if you're deploying Windows 10 PC, you want to deploy a thin client, and you don't want to patch and update a thin client as often as you would Windows. So
if you patch through WSUS,
yes, if the write filter is enabled. The write filters are disabled by default for specifically that reason. You need to enable it, and if it's enabled, you need to disable it again. With the write filters off, anybody can make changes to the system. Potentially. You would probably buy a zero client or a compact edition, which would just boot into it. Right. Completely agree. This is for enterprises that want the Windows 7 experience locally and want the same management and security that they would expect out of the Windows Embedded line. Yes, sir.
So, going back to the patching, I mean, the way I've always understood it working is you guys don't ever publish them on Windows Update that you've done, give them to the OEM, and we have to get them from the OEM and deploy them with our own deployment.
You mean for Windows Embedded? Yes, that's true. But that's what I'm saying. We're investigating because Windows, you're going to get this not through the OEMs, but through VL. We'll have a mechanism to push out the same patches and updates that go to the OEMs directly to the Windows 10 PC through WSUS and Windows Update. Yes, different schedule. Right now, it's a different schedule. We are, again, no promises. We're trying to look at what that schedule means and how we can make it more optimal. But yeah, it's a different schedule, different cadence. You would need to manually disable the write filter through a script, but yeah, you can absolutely do that. You can absolutely do that. The WEDM product just makes that a little bit more efficient and enables you to scale for large-scale deployments. But that one needs SCCM. It needs SCCM, yes. It needs SCCM. Oh, sorry. No, it's a pure patch management. It's a pure update solution. It's not antivirus. So I was hoping nobody would ask me that question. Right now, Forefront is not supported officially on any of the Windows embedded platforms. And unfortunately, because we're a derivative of OS 7, Windows 10 PC doesn't support Forefront either. I've gotten tons of requests. Thank you, by the way, for those of you that have gone through the CTP program and have provided me this feedback. I've heard it loud and clear that you want Forefront, and I am working with my team to figure out how to get that to you. We're investigating it. There are some. Let me put it this way: there are some deep problems that prevent Forefront from running on the embedded platform, and you're working through that right now. But when Windows 10 PC RTMs, it will not have Forefront support. But we will work on it. I'll get back to you guys on that. Yes, sir. A group policy is completely supported on Windows 10 PC. Oh yeah, absolutely. You can lock down the USB drive. You can lock down. You can you can boot into a RDP session directly. You can use group policy to do a whole bunch of things. I figured. Yeah. Right. You can do that. I mean, there's again, thing to bear in mind. Pretty much if it's an enterprise feature that most of you use, and if it's available in West 7, it's definitely available in Windows 10 PC. I think that's a good estimate. Yes, sir. I'm sorry? We're working with Citrix to try and figure that out. I mean, I've installed it, but Citrix has to release an official statement of support. We're working with them on that. You mean the Citrix receiver, right? Yeah, we're working with them on that.
So as part of the SCCM client, all the other functionalities available?
Through SCCM, yes.
Software metering and all that.
SCCM is fully supported on Windows 10 PC. What is that? No, I'm just kidding. We haven't. We are not testing Windows 10 PC with a whole bunch of platforms, because primarily, I mean, if you go to VMware View, you don't get the remote effects capability. You lose some functionality. So it's fully supported on Hyper-V, supports remote effects. We are not testing on VMware View, but there's no reason why it won't support it. There's absolutely no reason why it wouldn't. All right, moving on, guys. I want to get you to your beer. So I'll blaze through these last few slides, I promise. BitLocker, quick show of hands. How many of you are familiar with BitLocker? Okay, fantastic. So I won't spend too much time on this. The BitLocker functionality that's in Windows 7 that enables you to encrypt your hard drive is now available in Windows 10 PC. Why? Because you can install Windows 10 PC on a laptop too. It has the entire wireless stack. So it's important to make sure that the hard disk is encrypted, because write filters can be turned off and users will install solitaire or confidential data, right? So you want to make sure that the hard disk is encrypted. We've also got BitLocker to Go support, which means that if users plug in USB keys, flash drives, and want to siphon off data, that data is also secure on the USB flash drive. I see some confused faces. BitLocker to Go, you guys familiar with that? Okay, all right. AppLocker. You want to prevent users from installing and running applications that are not supported. AppLocker is the solution to that. AppLocker helps you maintain both blacklists and whitelists of applications, so you have much more control over your Windows 10 PC, the same level of control as organizations with Windows 7 Enterprise get. So again, a very, very useful tool. Okay, last two slides, guys, I promise, okay, and then we're out of here. Number one. Let's look at a comparison. I mean, great. We talked a lot about thin clients, zero clients. Let's take a look at really what the difference is. So traditional thin client, reduced hardware, reduced footprint, blah blah blah. We've been through this multiple times already. But essentially, what I wanted to point out, many of you had this question: what is the difference between a thin client and a zero client, right? And how does that compare to a Windows 10 PC? A zero client, many of you saw those devices in the pavilion. No operating system, no local hardware. It's nothing but a I/O redirector. That's all it does. It redirects I/O. Now it's great. The benefit is that there's very little that can get corrupt at the local endpoint. The device TCO is extremely high because those things they'll just last. If not, great for branch offices. If the device fails, throw it out, plug in another one. It's meant to be used like that. What that means, however, is that you need something to process the I/O calls, something to process the graphics, something to process everything that's being transmitted to the endpoint on the server side. So your server costs are going to go up, and I want to make sure that you guys are aware of that fact, right? Because the zero client vendors are not going to tell you that, right? So zero clients, great for extremely low device TCO, but you need to manage, and you need to make sure that the server can handle that capacity. Windows 10 PC, we talked about how it behaves, and we saw how it looks, behaves, smells, feels exactly like a West 7 client. Final question for anybody who can give me the answer and win the last one of these. What's the biggest advantage that Windows 10 PC has over thin clients and zero clients? Sorry? I'm sorry, who said that? Sorry, there's a line. Low upfront hardware costs. Anything else? Anybody want to give me the full answer? The full answer. Combine the two sentences. That man said it right there. Lower hardware and software costs. I'll send this to you after. But you're right. Yeah, you can come down and pick it up. But that's really the biggest benefit is, it's a benefit of SA, VDA, low hardware, software costs. So how do you want to think about this, right? I mean, I realize that many of you have different environments. Many of you are in different stages of maturity when it comes to thin client computing. So what I would highly recommend is, first of all, look at what scenarios make sense and identify pure server-based desktop scenarios. That's the key. You don't want to deploy ThinPC in environments where you need local computing power because that's not what it's designed to do, right? You want to identify those scenarios where all you have is a remote desktop. For those scenarios, you fall into one of two buckets, okay? And you can tell me which one you guys are in. Number one, you are not sure if thin client computing is right for you. Maybe you've just deployed VDI sessions, you're looking at thin client computing. You don't want to spend money on a new device or new licensing. If you fall into that bucket, try Windows ThinPC. And if you have SA, it makes it even more compelling. It's absolutely free, no cost to you, right? Try Windows ThinPC. However, if you have a mature deployment of VDI and sessions and you know that thin client computing is absolutely right for you, the power savings, the security, the advantages that you get with a lockdown, thoroughbred Windows embedded device cannot be matched by Windows ThinPC, right? So if you're that kind of customer, use a Windows embedded thin client. The beauty is, since both platforms are basically built off of the same set of code, your investments in management, your investments in security, your policies, everything that you've invested for a Windows ThinPC environment will work out of the box when you move to a Windows embedded based thin client. So it's a great stepping stone to a Windows embedded. So you can get a few more years of life out of your PC. All right. With that, I want to thank you guys for sticking around. It's almost full session time. If you have any further questions, please fill up an eval. If you like my session, tell me. If you didn't, tell me. If you have any doubts, I'm at the booth pretty much all week. Come meet me, let's talk, and I can give you some more resources. If those of you still haven't tried Windows ThinPC, the beta software is still available at connect.microsoft.com. While we wait for RTM, I highly encourage you to try it. We're not accepting feedback anymore, but I would highly encourage you to try it if you haven't already. With that, I'm done. Thank you, guys. Thank you for attending.